This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist. I would like to welcome you to an exciting new series I'm putting on each month in 2017. In the month of January, I'm going to go through 30 days to a better compliance program. So each day I will detail some part of a compliance program that you can utilize to help you improve to have a best practices compliance program for 2017. With the operationalization of compliance mandated by the Department of Justice in the form of their Compliance Council, Wei Chin, and incorporated into the FCPA pilot program announced by the Department of Justice in April 2016, it's more important than ever that you upgrade your compliance program and show how you've operationalized. In this series, I'm going to help you do that. I hope you will enjoy this series. I hope you will join me, and I look forward to this journey with you. I'm Fox. Welcome to day 20 of 30 days to a better compliance program. Today I'm going to take up the topic of a compliance committee at the board of directors level. Under the U.S. sentencing guidelines, boards must exercise reasonable oversight on the effectiveness of a company's compliance program. The Justice Department Prosecution Standards pose the following queries. Do the directors exercise independent review of a company's compliance program? And 2, are the directors provided information sufficient to enable the exercise of independent judgment? Moreover, the FCPA Guidance requires a Chief Compliance Officer to have direct access to the board and an appropriate subcommittee. The guidance also requires a tangible commitment from the top levels of an organization, starting with the board of directors, which would create an ethical culture within an organization. At the board of directors level, a compliance committee can devote itself exclusively to non-financial compliance, such as FCPA, anti-money laundering, and competitiveness compliance. While many companies have fulfilled these obligations through an audit committee, clearly the better practice is to have a separate compliance committee. The reason is clear that compliance has not only become central to any well-run business, but is critical to overseeing a wider variety of risks than the typical audit committee has experience with. If you recall on day 19, I talked about compliance experience on the board. Well, this experience should be embedded into a compliance committee. The compliance committee should begin its inquiry with a basic, how do we know what is working? In other words, is a company's compliance program living up to the hallmarks of an effective compliance program in the eyes of the government? I would generally advocate 4 areas of more specific inquiry. So, a compliance committee should obtain information on the processes to carry out the compliance function rather than on the specific details. Compliance committees need to understand that there is a single individual or corporate discipline keeping track of the compliance function and making sure that it is properly handled. They also need to understand there's a system in place that keeps track of compliance requirements. Second, you should look in the area of hotlines or internal reporting mechanisms. The compliance committee needs to know the details about both inbound issues and the responses thereto. This has become significantly more important after the Dodd-Frank whistleblower provisions and the tight time frames for reporting both internally and then to the Securities and Exchange Commission. On the inbound side, this means details about who answers the reports, whether they come in via email or phone, how the information is triaged, and in what time frame. It also requires an understanding of whether the reporting system is truly anonymous with a no-use caller ID or GPS tracking. Next, the board needs to look at responses to information which come to the attention of the company, such as basic inquiries as how reports are classified and routed, who gets notified of the types of calls, how is the investigative process divided among the various functions, and how is it outsourced. Finally, what is the response rate and response time? The compliance committee must know who is accountable and responsible for each segment of a compliance program. They should obtain assurance from the compliance function that has developed a charter that makes it clear where the obligations fall across management so it can assess accountability. While it is true that an effective compliance committee will allow management to do the job of running the day-to-day business, they need to understand and set long-term strategy. Strategic planning is another area well suited for oversight by a board compliance committee. For such a committee to be effective and informed, it must have an appreciation of where the compliance function stands, not only at the present moment, but also a strategic plan for compliance and ethics to grow. You've heard me talk about Stephen Martin, a partner at Arnold & Porter, who's long advocated a 1, 3, and 5-year compliance game plan. This gives you a strategic outline that you can look for, but you can work with your compliance committee to modify and revise that outline as appropriate information becomes available to you. This means the compliance committee should demand the compliance function be nimble enough to respond to new information or actions, such as mergers and acquisitions, divestitures, or other external events. If this dynamic changes, you want to get the board's attention on the changes that may need to happen with your compliance program. Another key area is risk assessments. This is something that we've talked about at some length during this 30-day exploration of a better compliance program. But a risk assessment is also something that the board's going to need to see, because the board needs to have a full appreciation of its risks, or rather the company's risk, so that it can help assess strategic oversight. And that's really the key. It's strategic oversight. It's not tactical oversight. It's not oversight in a way that requires day-to-day operations. But the board needs to understand what are the risks, what are the areas of risk, what are the products that are at risk, what are the manner of sales that are at risk. We've talked at some length yesterday about Wells Fargo. Well, there you had 3 relatively benign products or tactics. You had essentially debit cards, you had a sales incentive system, and then you had an employee evaluation system. Well, not every business has a debit card. They do have products. And when you put a product with relatively well-used tactics, such as sales incentives and measurement of employee evaluations, and they go awry in such a manner, I would suggest that's something that would have been a board could have had appropriate oversight. And that leads to the hyper-transparency in which in today's social media, which may make a compliance committee's task seem Herculean. But more than simply the regulatory climate, shareholders are taking a much more active role in asserting their rights against boards of directors. It is incumbent that a board seek out and obtain sufficient information to fulfill their obligations to keep companies off the front page of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Financial Times, so as to prevent serious reputational damage. A board compliance committee is certainly a good place to start. So what are the 3 key takeaways from today's piece? First, a board compliance committee can help a chief compliance officer carry out the compliance function. If you have an advocate committee that you are reporting to and indeed working with, it can give you not only a backstop for additional funding and resources, but it can also help you articulate larger strategic goals. 2, a board compliance committee can work to keep a chief compliance officer accountable. If a chief compliance officer reports to the board once a year or to an audit committee for a minor part of a quarterly report, this may not keep the chief compliance officer accountable. And if you have a board committee dedicated to compliance with compliance expertise on it, they can hold the chief compliance officer accountable to the goals set for each year. And finally, strategic planning. This is something that many compliance officers wish they had more time to do, but somehow strategic planning is not always on the fore. And when you have a board committee, it can really help on strategic planning because that's the job of a board, strategic planning. And you can really bring that expertise to compliance and be a great resource to the compliance function in strategic planning. This is Tom Fox. I hope you have enjoyed day 20 of 30 Days to a Better Compliance Program, and I hope you'll join me tomorrow for day 21.